Alright, you're probably wondering, do I like retro games? Well, we're playing Doom 1, obviously, but retro games are subjective. So, this is like a Gen X game from like late 80s, early 90s, I think. I think that's when Doom 1 came out. Obviously, I'm 25, so I'm born in 97. So, retro to me is not going to be something like this because I got into Doom very late. I'm thinking like I knew it existed since like Doom 3 and stuff, but I did not play it until like 2016's era, where I started with the first Doom, but I bought off the Xbox Marketplace and then got into Doom 2016, and then now I'm playing every single Doom game. But I don't really want to play Doom on YouTube because it's gruesome and I don't need to get flagged because of stuff like that. But retro to me is more like 2004, Windows XP era, stuff like that, like Halo 2, Star Wars Battlefront, Half-Life, especially Half-Life. So that's my interpretation of retro games, and even some Xbox 360 games, such as Mirror's Edge, Lost Planet, Call of Duty 4. That would be something that I would consider retro for my generation, which is Gen Z, versus people who play like Ataris, Commodore 64s, whatever that is, Sega, Genesis, whatever. I missed out on every single one of those because one, I'm not alive at the time, and two, I didn't really. I started on PC, but my PC gaming was mostly just Windows XP stuff. So I was playing stuff like Counter Strike, Condition Zero, Half Life, stuff like that. But those were dated too. And my brother showed me a game called Quake. And I also heard Joe Rogan from the UFC talking about Quake a lot. And then I checked it out and I'm like, this is where Half Life got their ideas from. Because Quake's a 90s game. And we also have to think too, Quake is also one of those games that first pioneered multiplayer shooters. And we see examples like that everywhere. But Doom is a great game because Doom is one game that I will actually go play back just for the music. But I also do it to like test OBS settings on for YouTube. But I also will test my Xbox settings when I'm playing on the Series X using Doom, such as my headphone volume and stuff like that. Because what I'll do is I'll just hold this down and just shoot and then see if I can hear it from both sides. And or if it's too loud, that sort of thing. But yeah, that's kind of backwards because you're probably wondering, dude, how is Halo 2 a retro game if it came out in 2004? Well, age difference. The guys who were playing Halo 2 and Halo 1 are most likely millennials, so they're going to be born in like early 90s and the 1980s and stuff like that. Whereas me being late 90s, yeah, you get the idea. So to me, early 2000s is retro, whereas someone born in the early 90s or even the 80s is not going to view the 2000s as retro. They're going to view stuff from the 90s as retro. So, and if you're Gen X, you're probably thinking like Atari along those lines, and really old stuff like Wolfenstein 3D and Pac-Man and what have you. But a game is a game, and if it's fun, it doesn't matter what year it came out, whether it's 2022 or whether it's. I think the oldest video game is some ping pong game that they made back in like the 1960s. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments what the oldest video game is, but that's my stance on retro games. I have nothing against them because without retro games, we wouldn't have all that high speed crazy stuff like we do today, because video games is like a science. Basically it's the science of advancing computers and what have you. So what worked back then on like Windows XP, now we got VR games. You have people talking about the metaverse. You got stuff like Wii and Kinect where it's motion sensitive, all kinds of crazy things. So I wonder what the next generation of video games is going to be when we have like PlayStation 10 and what have you, like 2030, 2040, or even 2050. I wonder what video games will be like. That was all.